So a couple from Eric Blake. We'll just read them in order so we get to, hey, Bill, here's something you ought to ask ourselves. All the panic over the coronavirus has led to stock market falls, fears of heading into to public events, etc. So it's pretty clear the left is trying to use people's fear to turn them against Trump in the election. Could they succeed? You know, I don't know. My sister, who is, she's not unreasonable, but she's definitely a liberal, was saying, well, I mean, in all honesty, what do you think about Trump's lack of leadership on this? And I said, I don't think it could be much improved. And so she is, and I said to her, just remember that everything you hear is being told to you by people who openly admit that they want people to die from this so that they can get Trump out of office. That's coloring the news that you get. One thing I think is, here's something it's just an interesting point. It's crossed my mind once or twice before, but thank you, Eric, for bringing it up because it probably needs to be elucidated a little more. I think we could probably say with some confidence that at the very least, the media is overselling this thing. And since this is the currency that those people deal with, I'll deal with it in their currency, which doesn't mean it's my currency. We all clear on this? What the media and the left is doing is they are basically, and they're saying it openly. They used to say we wanted an economic recession, a crash, so that Trump could be voted out of office. But this is a special benefit for them. Now they're openly saying, and not so openly, but it's crystal clear that the lunatics among them are saying, oh, I hope this thing is really bad. I hope this disease wipes out this country. Not me, obviously, meaning the commentator, because I'm a rich liberal and I'll be fine. But let's hope that enough people die so that we can run Trump out of office. And people said Trump ought to resign over the COVID-19 virus and this kind of thing. If they it seemed to me to be certainly way over manufacturing the fear side of this. So I think two things are in play here. One of them is, I find it hard to believe that anybody will blame Donald Trump for the actual disease. I mean, that's just a. So the question is, will they be able to spin the narrative into the Trump administration botched preparedness and so on and so forth? But here's where they may have made, once again, where they may have blown their own foot off here. If they are, if they're overselling the results of this virus, and people don't die to the degree that they've been told they will, then what happens then? Well, needless to say, it goes down the memory hole as far as they're concerned. But what happens then? They have basically said that Trump colluded with Russia and there's no evidence, and there's Ukraine, no evidence, impeachment, no evidence, all of this stuff. Now they're telling everybody we're going to die because of Trump, and we're not. That much I'm certain of. And so if the media has told people that Trump has so badly botched this COVID-19 thing, then, and they've certainly oversold the mortality, then it could actually end up completely backfiring on them. Could end up being the kind of thing where people realize this, that they're hoping for people to die so that they can win an election they have no chance of winning otherwise. So we'll see. It's going to get clearer as time goes on. I personally don't find any tremendous fault in the government or in the way they've handled this. I would certainly think that I would like to have seen prior to this more resources dedicated to this kind of thing. And once again, we're back to maybe we learned something from this simulation, from this close call. Maybe this will scare us enough to be investing more money in in vaccine preparedness and the ability to manufacture vaccines and procedures and all the rest of it. I think that would be a valuable thing. And look, I am philosophically, personally, and emotionally 100% on the side of as little government as possible. But if this meant that government funds had to be spent on something like this, then to me personally, this is what governments are for. We have a strategic. We don't need it anymore because of how frickin' bright we are. But we have and had a strategic oil reserve, and I think it's in the interest of the American people, even if the government had to buy every drop of that oil and build the hole to put it in. The idea of a strategic oil reserve, to me, is not only a good idea, it's what a competent government does. I understand completely that vaccines, especially with these kinds of diseases, with a virus like COVID-19 or any flu virus that mutates quickly enough and is able to disguise itself as well as the cold does, or nearly as well. I understand that you cannot stockpile a vaccine. That a vaccine is something that is you can stockpile smallpox vaccine, but you can't stockpile vaccine, the general purpose vaccine. But what you can do is you can certainly make investments in the ability to rapidly produce copious amounts of vaccines, and that would be, I think, one of the few things that I think we could learn on a government level in this. Otherwise, I think they've done a fairly good job. So, look, when I hear people saying Trump is responsible for the coronavirus, there's a percentage of people that think he's responsible for the tides. So, if it turns out that's the case, then that's the case. As far as the stock market is concerned, when the stock market crashes, it's crashing because people are selling, and it really is panic. And I don't have to explain this, but I'm going to anyway. Basically, people see stocks declining, and they predict that the stocks are significantly decline, and so they sell. And the more they sell, the more the market goes down, and the more people sell, and so on. This is not the first you've ever heard this, but it is sound advice. You don't take a stock market loss unless you sell less than what you paid for. If you ride this thing out and hold on to your stock, you haven't lost anything. In fact, you make a pretty compelling case that this would be a good time to start buying some stock because you're getting some good deals. People wanting to cut their losses have made all of these sales. That drives the number down. But as Trump pointed out, and as needs to be pointed out repeatedly, this is not a financial crisis. This is a healthcare crisis. And so since the suppression of the market is not based on market forces exactly, really is an act of God kind of thing, it seems to me that once this thing goes, the economy will not only be in the same shape it was. It's going to take a hit from the loss of production and things shutting down, no question about that. But now it seems the time to buy, because when people sell in a panic, they're trying to cut their losses. But if you don't need to sell and you don't sell anything, then you haven't lost a penny until you sell it. And if it turns out that 6 months from now or 3 months from now, the market is back where it was before, you haven't lost a thing. And if the market's higher as a result of the confidence gained from having been through this, then you've actually made money. If there was some something like the 2008 crisis, where it was a collapse of the debt structure, that this kind of pathological defect in finance was finally coming home, I'd feel real differently about this. But this doesn't seem to be the case. It seems to be the case that people who have had to sell because maybe they need their cash out or whatever, but most of it's just plain panic. So people have sold, so their stock prices go down. Nothing in the economy caused that crash, and it seems to me that it should be able to come back, and you get some real bargains. And I think it'll come back pretty quickly too. I think Red Scourge here, he's talking about stocks. Looks like he knows what we're talking about. If you buy a company with a market cap under 50 billion, you are playing a risky game. Ensure that you have some index funds. It's really hard to beat the index average. Yes, so that's an excellent point. The point is that this economic downturn, which is a result of the virus, is not going to hurt the economy long term, but it might dry up the capital for certain companies that don't have enough capitalization. And you may end up putting money into a stock that then goes to zero. But Boeing is 50% off. It's because air travel's just, no one's traveling by air. And Boeing had some problems with its reputation with the MAX and all the rest of that stuff. And that's an interesting Stratosphere launch story, the story of the 737 MAX and what the real story of that airplane is and why that particular system was installed and what actually happened on those two crashes. But in any event, now's the time to buy. It's a real bargain. And you start to wonder, I know nothing about, but it seems to me that if people who would not normally buy stocks are now buying some stocks because it appears to be a bargain, then it's also possible that as the market recovers, as the COVID-19 retreats, people go back to buying stock that they may have sold. Ending may be a bump. Could be a bump. Who knows? I don't know. People know more than I do. But in any event, that's what it looks like to me, just feels like to me.